Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the conversation series on mediation, created with an aim and vision to promote awareness of mediation in the world around us and to talk about mediation from the perspective of a common person. We continue with a short legal disclaimer. The views expressed herein and the voluntary personal perspectives of the speakers and may or may not represent the community, larger professional community they belong to. The conversation series aims to provide a general overview of the subject matter involved and should not be construed as a legal or professional advice in any manner whatsoever. This session is being recorded for wide circulation. Let me introduce the main speaker and the guest panelists for today's session on coercive control, intimate partner violence, and mediation. Mrs. Lisa Singh. Lisa Singh is a professional mediator, management trainer, facilitator, coach, and intercultural communications expert who has devoted all her professional career to helping people communicate more effectively. And Lisa is coming second or maybe third time on our show, so I'm doing a very short introduction for her. Welcome on board, Lisa. It's always a pleasure to welcome you on board.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's such an honor to be here with you. I mean, you are such a wonderful hostess and the hostess with the mostest.
Yeah. So, BJ is a credential distinguished mediator, paralegal certified in HR management and internal HR consultant. She's also a member of various associations, including of the Texas Association of Mediators, and was a former Dallas County election judge. Welcome on board, BJ. I have done a very short introduction of yourself, but it's always a pleasure to have you here with us. You are also coming second time. Welcome on board.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here and I'm excited about this topic. Good to see you again, Lisa. You also. So I am excited and thank you for all you're doing to spread the word about mediation globally. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
It's a pleasure. Kanishk Pandey is a penultimate law student at WIPS New Delhi. He has worked with different organizations like Sama and Mediate Group and has a vast experience in handling family dispute cases in mediation in Sama. So welcome on board, Kanishk. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Kanishk is also coming second time because he's also guest panelist for an earlier session. So Ganesh, welcome on board.
Thank you so much, Sonal. And that's wonderful because I'm so happy to be here again and, talk about the practice of mediation and especially, with all my eminent panelists with me because it's always a wonderful experience gaining knowledge, learning about the new trends and the difficulties that are being faced in different places at the same time so that, it keeps me up to date also and helps me express my views also. Glad to be here.
So today's topic is a little tough because when we are talking about coercive control and we are talking about domestic violence or intimate partner violence, we are tackling a lot of things here. We are tackling about intimate relationship, which may or may not include only the husband-wife or the spousal relationship that generally is seen. We're talking about coercive control. We are also talking about coercive control that happens in a lot of societal cases, especially in workplaces. Workplaces. So we have to handle it from a very different perspective here. So I would call upon Lisa first of all because Lisa has been working with transformative mediation and she has had an experience of handling a lot of cases in family mediation. So Lisa, over to you. What is coercive control and intimate partner violence? What are your experiences in mediation in such cases?
So I want to start by saying, we try to, especially in the state of Ohio, make sure that all the mediators are aware of violence and the potential of it because we don't want to mediate all cases if it's not going to be safe for two people to be in the room. I want to start with that just so we didn't know. If it's not going to be safe for two people to be in the same room, if someone is going to exert coercive control is is getting somebody to comply with, you know, whatever you want. So that's what it means to me. And that can be physical, which would be, you know, abuse, that kind of abuse, but also emotional. So people also can exert emotional control. And we do a lot of awareness so that when we have parties in the room, we can identify that if it starts to happen. And then if it starts to happen, then we have a toolkit and a number of ways to handle it. I mean, we could, you know, suspend it. We could go into caucuses or different ways, but the main thing is to be aware that it's happening, and to be able to mitigate that, especially if it becomes not safe for the other party. So I want to put that up front before we start, because I don't want somebody listening to say, oh, well, we can go mediate this, and then, you know, and then someone gets into, so being aware of what that is. But for us, for family issues, we have a wide range, and we get domestic violence cases, not just between husband and wife, but also between children and parents. It can be parents to children or children to parents. The ones that we generally mediate are not ones in which they're in imminent threat of danger, but where they can benefit from a discussion about what to do next. And a lot of times, some of the things that are on the table, like, might be counseling, that they agree to counseling, or they agree to some further type of intervention. But again, if there's an imminent threat of danger, I mean, I had one in which it was very obvious to me that the father was intimidating the daughter in a mediation, and that we didn't know that until the mediation, and I suspended the mediation because I felt like she then was being re-victimized and coerced during the mediation. So I put that on the table because I don't want misunderstanding. I don't want to say, oh yes, you know, let's just go and mediate anything. But, you know, a lot of times it does open up to the greater discussion, and between it, you know, husband and wife, or between the children, and even, you know, even we get to romantic partners. That's part, we also mediate that because we have a lot of issues with romantic partners. I've also mediated cases of where children were born out of wedlock, so we have that as well. So those types of cases. And that's where we have domestic violence and coercive behavior. But again, I really have to highlight that it is something that we like to have, we like to handle carefully. And another thing is, I don't know, like in other countries have different rules, but we also have a required reporting rule, and which means if somebody has a threat of violence, we are required to report that, especially against a child. We are required to report that, even as mediators. I don't like to be in that situation, but if someone is in danger, we have to and we tell them in the mediation that everything is confidential, but if there's domestic violence or something like that, then we are required to put it. So I put that up front. But I think it's I want to talk about the broader issue because, you know, we have, it becomes very, very difficult when we see the violence. If there's violence between two partners, that makes its ways to the children. The children have that, and they grow up sometimes to be some of the people who were perpetrators. I hear in the mediation that they had domestic violence in their family. So it goes from family to generation and gets carried on. And I know that, you know, even in my family, you know, in my first marriage, we had domestic violence, and that, you know, was a result of my husband having that in his family. So it got carried on from person to person. And I see the effects. I'm saying something personally, but I think that personal stories are powerful. And I see the effects on my children, and their partners and their ways of doing something, doing things. And so I feel like it's important to have that knowledge because we have to break the cycle. I mean, I'm fortunate so far. Knock on wood, I'll be my children and my sons are not carrying on, as far as I know, that they have broken that cycle, and that's a good thing. But we have to look at that, because I think it's not just important to the family. We talk about it in, especially as mediators, well, it's just the family, but it's not. It's our greater society as a whole.
Yes.
So
So
okay, sorry. I'm
no. That was really brave of you. That was really, because when people will come out and people will talk about it, then the taboo of it being, something out of the world goes away, because it is something that is happening in our society. It is happening just right next door, and we are not going to close our eyes and say that, it's okay. It's not okay. So we have to discuss about it. Then only it will be okay. Because then we are able to, we are an accomplished race to handle it, and to handle it properly. So that points to two things, Lisa, when you said that, first of all, you also talked about live-in relationship, that what I could
Mhm.
understand, and boyfriend, girlfriend, teenage, teenage.
Yes.
There have been cases in India as well. Teenagers indulging in violence because somebody turned down their overtures, or there was a love triangle and all that, acid attack, that is violence.
And
That is,
let me also add, yeah, the coercive behavior, because things that are happening in the US with like TikTok and all those others are putting on, pictures that are, revealing, or putting something embarrassing out that then it spills out to the community, because I've mediated a lot of those cases where a boyfriend gets upset and then he posts a naked picture of the girlfriend,
yeah.
then that becomes a bigger issue. So it's not just necessarily physical violence. Again, that's an emotional violence. And
And
we need to be
social
aware of
violence. Sorry to
emotional
interrupt.
violence, emotional violence.
Social
We need to
also.
be aware of emotional violence as well. And we get, people also who use people as scapegoats. So I can think of that as well, that they get the blame, or they're made to think that they're less than. Those are other emotional violence that also happens, is very, very common with the youth. And we do a lot of mediations with youth over those issues.
Yes, and with the internet, there have been cases of bullying on internet.
Mhm.
That is violence. There have been cases of uh, uh, blaming, of libel, slander, of so those violence generally go unnoticed, but they are the ones who are affecting the community, the society, the teenage, the youth, who are going to be the citizens, or the next generation. So we have to talk about that also. That the reason why this is happening, we have to. And yes, one more thing that I wanted to say, that most of the, when you were talking about how violence happens, there are times when people are not even aware that this is a violent act. Sometimes people are so used to, and they get used to being
Mhm.
in that relationship, being manipulated
Yes.
into a relationship, that they do not even come to know that this is happening is wrong with me. And this generally happens in a fiduciary relationship, kind of a,
Mhm.
whether it is a boss to a junior. Here, let's talk to Brinda, because workplace coercive control also is happening, where a boss is intimidating the employees, and that affects the home also. Like you said, Brenda, I'll use that quote of yours: to the world you are just one person, but to one person you are their world. So whatever happens in the workplace actually gets carried away home. So we have to talk about that also.
Absolutely. Okay, again, I'm Brenda BJ Guide Dudes, Dallas, Texas mediator and HR consultant, Guide Mediation Group. We guide you decide. But yeah, so workplace violence is one of those things to where there's someone that's in authority that has power or leverage over you, and they will do things like threats of terminating you, insulting you, micromanaging you, humiliating you, being dismissive, threats of demoting you, and even threats of cutting your pay. I mean, I've seen that happen. And one example I could give is that, let's say you're a single mom or you are a widow. Let's say you're a single mom with two children and you really need your job. You get a new manager and everything was fine before, but now you have a new manager, and that new manager, for whatever reason, micromanaging you, insults you, do things like everybody in the team is invited to a meeting, but you didn't get the email. Not one time, but two times. So you didn't get notice of the meeting. Everybody else did. So you weren't prepared. You didn't have your spreadsheets. You didn't, you weren't able to get the things that you need. That is a prime example. So if you're a single mom and you got two kids, how long can you take these threats of, oh, I'm going to cut your pay if you don't do better? Oh, you're not doing a good job. Everybody else is doing this. Why can't you keep up? Why can't you turn in your stuff on time? But you're turning it in as you know that it's due. So you weren't aware. So those types of things, it can be really intimidating. And for someone who has never experienced that, that is literally trauma, workplace trauma, to be in a situation where you need your job. You're a single mom, but you're facing this every day. So when you get to work every day, you're in the car crying for 10, 15 minutes because you know what you're getting ready to walk into, but you have to do what you have to do. That takes an impact on a person's spirit, mind, body, and soul, but it happens every day. It happens every day. So the emotional aspect of that is that, how can I find another job? And if I find another job, is it going to pay me as much? What am I going to do about childcare? It's a whole range of things that mom has to think about, because if she gets another job, what about the kids? Where are they going to be as far as school and work? So it's a very difficult situation for any employee to go through. And it's not just with the managers. It could also be with your coworkers. Let's say you have a supervisor that really don't care for you. There are subtle things that they can do. And, I just think back. I remember once upon a time, my auntie, I have an auntie who's a nuclear chemist. She worked at a chemical company, and she was telling me how when she was coming up the ranks, how she would not be invited to meetings. And, it's like it seemed like she was never prepared because she didn't get the knowledge and did not know that she needed to be at a meeting at a certain time. And eventually it was revealed that her supervisor was doing this to her, but nothing happened to the supervisor. So, it's like the more things change sometimes, the more they stay the same. But we all have power within us to take control of our own emotions, and just know no one should stay in a situation where they feel like they're being mistreated. You have to know your worth and know that you are not meant to be in a position where people can just trash on you and dump their stuff on you mentally, physically, and emotionally, because everybody's going through something, but you just have to know your value and to get out. Like in a domestic violence type situation, even in a marriage or relationship, it takes time to get out. It takes time to get out, but you do need to get out and be safe, because mentally it can affect you. You could be so caught up in a volatile workplace situation. And I know someone this happened to, where they were really stressed out at work, going through a lot, and they were just driving and ran the red light, and police came behind them. They didn't even know they ran the red light because they were so stressed out, So it takes a toll on you and you don't even know it. So workplace violence can be subtle, very subtle threats, but it's all intentional for the person that's doing it, because they know what they're doing and they've done it to other people. And one of the things I can say that's really hard is when the person that's doing the intimidating is the boss or the spouse of a boss. Let's just say you're an HR manager. I know this someone that's happened. You're an HR manager. You've been an HR manager for 5 years, and the husband and wife own the company, right? So if you're HR, who are you going to go to? If you're the HR department, who are you going to go to when there's a problem? You can't go to yourself, and your bosses are the one that's doing the intimidation. What do you do? So it can be a very, very trying situation for some employers, some HR managers, some people who are in situations where they really don't know what to do. But I say, just get out. There's always something better. All money is not good money. Let me just say that, and I'll leave that there.
Wonderful, because when people are not, when people are in a situation, they're caught, and there are no way out. Because when you are in a situation where you don't know how to, and first of all, to be able to understand that it is happening to you, to be able to recognize, because when you are in a compromising situation and you have to accept somebody's, you keep going on doing that. Maybe this is the last time this is happening. Maybe this will happen. Maybe just one project, let me complete. He's being bullying, so maybe that happens. Let's wait. Let's and that keeps on, and then it becomes a rule, it becomes a habit that is very difficult to break, because then the person who is bullying you also gets used to you being bullied. So even if you try to break that pattern, the person will not take it, and then you have not the energy left to break that pattern, because you have to need your job, and then you keep compromising your peace of mind, your health, for the sake of those breadcrumbs which really don't matter, those peanuts which really do not matter when you weigh down. So, Kanishk, let's talk to you here, because you're nodding and you have been working with domestic violence cases. That was an interesting case you earlier also told. So, since it's similar, akin to what you have been dealing, let me talk of all the cases that you have handled. Have you ever realized that the people who are involved are even the person who is inflicting that violence on the other person, is that person also aware that he's doing, or he or she is doing something wrong? Because it could be happening either ways. There are women who check their husband's mobiles, try to control that. That's a silent control. They check their teenager sons or daughters' mobiles. That where are you going? You should be here. And so there a situation for a spouse who has to always prove their innocence to the other person. And actually, no violence is happening. No physical violence is happening.
Yes.
But the violence is there, and that threat is always there, and that's an emotional violence. So let's talk to you. Have you ever felt that the people are aware or not aware of what they are doing?
Ma'am, so, like how I'll to talk about coercive control and intimate partner violence, as Lisa earlier also mentioned. So, see, I was recently working on a very something that has been something phenomenal throughout India. This is Shraddha Walker murder case. So in this, this is an actual example of the situation that is prevailing currently in India. I would say it's a very extreme situation, but to answer your questions, your doubts, to clarify them, I would talk from the example of what happened in this particular case. So what was happening in this particular case? Shraddha Walker was a very young teenager of 27 years old person, and she was in a live-in relationship with this her boyfriend, Mr. Aftab. So Mr. Aftab had created a coercive control over all the actions of Mrs. Shraddha Walker. Shraddha, she did not know where, like she did not know, but Aftab was keeping an eye on her, and eventually that coercive control made her, when she realized that she was being watched in every step, her phone was being cross-checked, her bank account details were being taken out from her laptops without her knowledge, and everything was, she was trying to he was trying to get out information, and because he was suspicious that she was having an affair with some person that did not even exist at that point of time. And the secondly, the point was he was contingent, like he was trying to, uh, since they were in a live-in relationship, but Shraddha's parents did not approve of Aftab because of their belief that he was someone who was, constantly having constant control over their daughter. Whenever she would visit her home with him, their parents noticed that he was constantly behind her back. Whatever she was speaking, he was trying to, cover it up or change the context of the conversation if he was starting to feel uncomfortable about it. That's what his parents noticed, as I noticed after looking on the case. So the parents also believed that he was someone who was trying to, influence her decision, make her, and it was working. So as to say what happens to a mental health of that person when he's in such a coercive control situation, that person feels threatened, person feels scared, and that person, as Brenda also pointed out earlier, that if an HR is being threatened by their boss, then who will they run to? So what happens when you're in a live-in relationship, even though you have your parents to run to, Shraddha was freezing in her boots. She did not understand what was happening to her because she was not able to assess the gravity of control he was having over her. Like, if, for example, today I'm drinking this coffee, and if, for example, I'm in a relationship with some person who is having coercive control over me, I hate that person. Like, eventually, I will start. She was also having this thought that he is not right for me. He is trying to, gain that control over me. But when he will ask me for this coffee, like, just pass the coffee. Even though I want to have this coffee, I want to stick to this coffee, I would feel threatened, or I would feel scared. What will happen if I don't give this coffee to him? Maybe he might just, take my life. And that's exactly what happened. He took her life. He is slaughtered her brutally, and this is still under investigation, unfortunately going in trial. But as soon as a coercive control, a dominant control is established in a fiduciary relationship, a relationship of trust and love is changed into a relationship of threatening that person, of making that person scared that the other person is in a position to use them, to defile them, to degrade them, to humiliate them. And at every point of time, he was so controlling that he did not allow her to move out of the house unless and until he felt it was right for her to do so. If she has to attend a party, he will go with her. If she has to go to the market, he will go with her. It is not that he was being a loving husband. Love is trusting someone to do some task, or love is to assist someone in doing something.
Yes.
He was monitoring each and every action of her and telling her, see, if you don't follow my instruction, I will do away with you. And that's what he exactly did. And she did not say anything to anyone except to the police personnel to whom she registered the report, that she was feeling threatened, and the official complaint was lodged against Aftab at that point. But no action could be taken because there was no existing proof. Only the allegations of one young woman who was in live-in relationship with her going to be spouse, or with her partner. The police cannot take action in these kind of cases without actual proof of violence. He was not hitting her on the head. He was not slapping her on the face. He was not trying to, leave marks on her body. He was leaving marks here, which cannot be checked by anyone, which cannot be seen by anyone. A person can scream out for help. I can understand that. But when a person is so scared as to not understand the gravity of the situation, for example, I am not studying today. I don't study for 10 days, and suddenly on the 11th day, there is my paper. And I go and fail in that paper. But till the 11th day, until I failed in that paper, I did not understand the gravity of my situation. So that's what exactly happened with her. She was not able to understand where this was going and where he was taking her. So,
Yes. That's yes. Please continue, Ganesh.
so
Please.
that's why coercive control eventually leads to intimate partner violence, and the visibility of that violence is something which very cleverly people try to hide. They do not inflict wounds on the body; they inflict it on the mind. They inflicted on the behavior of the person. They change and mold that person according to their own conveniences until they need them. So that's what a toxic relationship is. to be very honest. And in a toxic relationship, like in a toxic workplace, similar to toxic workplace, if the person being victimized does not move out or does not escape from that place, or takes the risk of escaping from that place, he will not be able to help themselves, because firstly she or she will need to help themselves to be strong headed enough at that point to break out of that person's control, to break out of that threat of that person. They have to take out the damage from here, they have to clean the wounds here, but the other person is not allowing them the time. You go to your parents or I'll move with you. You go to your friends or I'll move with you. You go to the market, I'll come with you. You go to the bank, I'll come with you. You go to the workplace, I'll be every time I'll be there at lunch. How the hell how can that young woman of 27 years can actually think about what is happening to her? And whenever she would say ki you do, if you will do any, but it came to a point when she said, I'll kill myself if you do anything to me. And I'll inform about it every what he said. That's now I'll tell you the manipulative part. What he said, I am a loving partner. I love you so much that I cannot, live without your presence. And I need you as you need me. And that's why I'm always there at your beck and call. So that's how you sugarcoat things, change the perspective of that person, make them confused in their own mind. Hey, boss, this is not the actual situation.
And here, Kanishk, you will appreciate that the parents were against that person. So she had an upper hand here. There are cases where parents, in front of outside, they give an image that, that loving husband or loving spouse or loving partner image, or that even if we talk about workplace, that caring boss image, but ultimately where you are hitting is here, not physical, because you understand that the moment you hit physically, you have something called an evidence under the Evidence Act, and you will be taken care of. So yes, this is where when earlier also I was talking about this, that the mere threat of violence, police is not going to take any action because it's just a mere threat of violence, and it could be false or false alarm also for all you know.
Actually, the point was when the police came on the when the police came on the first complaint that was lodged, what they stated to us, like to my seniors, that see, we went to their house and we saw that everything was in place, that the husband was always doing the work at home. You can see in Indian culture, it's very rare that that a partner is working, the male partner is working, but he was always working, like he was doing everything. So they felt that it was suspicious, but they felt that maybe it was an act of love, since they were in a relationship, but they did not understand the intricacy that maybe, just maybe, he's creating a fake environment to show love. That was
the thing is, I think, and I mean, that's the point. The point is that the coercive behavior that's emotional is much more difficult to prove in a court of law or to have the police address. And in many ways, it's more destabilizing and more violent without physical violence, but a lot of people are not recognizing it. And I think I like what you said, because I have a relative of our own who, she got into a relationship with a boy, a man, and everyone thought he was wonderful in the beginning. He seemed very, very attentive and everything seemed fine. And she moved in with him, and and she had children with him, and everything looked good. But then slowly and slowly he started to turn. It didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly and slowly. And he started intimidating her. And to the extent that, okay, then he decided, and he took the children so that he only was allowed to transport the children. She wasn't allowed to transport the children. So he had total control of the children. That kept her in the house. Then he brought another girl into the house so that she could earn the money and support him with some other woman. in the same household, and all this was going on. And then finally he got violent. And if her parents had not gotten involved, and what they had to do, because she wouldn't tell anybody, she wouldn't admit what was happening because she was so afraid of losing her children. And he captured her with the children. She was so afraid of not losing the children that finally the parents, they saw, okay, what happened, because they could see. And she said, oh yeah, I got attacked in the parking lot. They're like, no, they didn't believe it. So they went and they cooked up, they went to the police, figured out what they had to do. And then they got her employer involved. And the employer said, yes, we've seen what's going on. We all feel helpless. We don't know how to help her. And so the employer said, okay, here's the deal. We're going to call her into work. So they called her into work. And while she went to work, then her parents took her to the police station so that she could tell the police what was happening, because that was the only way to get her children out. And then they went and got the children free. Otherwise, she would have been stuck. And they had to go through this process to get her away, to make her safe. And so it's like these kinds of things are a lot trickier and a lot more invasive and a lot more difficult. The legal system itself cannot handle all of it because they're constrained with what is evidence, and an emotional abuse doesn't show evidence. So I mean, I don't blame them, but we all have to, as a society, be more aware so that we can give support and help. I mean, fortunately for her, she had a boss who could see that. She had people who were involved who could help her. Otherwise, who knows how much longer she would have had to suffer with that kind of behavior. And a lot more things happened to her that we didn't know, that things that he did with the mind. So we think about that. I think it's important to realize that coercive behavior is not just, like I said, not just violent, but it's full of all kinds of nuances.
Yeah. And I'd just like to add, Carnice, what you were saying, and to your point, Lisa, for me, what I can say, my experience and what I've seen with domestic violence and abuse here in the state of Texas specifically, abuse is one of those things to where they're doing the best they can, but there's a lot of room for improvement. Someone I know was involved in a domestic violence situation, and they went to the police, and the police immediately sent them back to the scene where the incident occurred. All right, not knowing that that perpetrator was still there. But the long story short is that this person was able to get a restraining order on this person. And the judge said, because this person has violated in Texas, because this person has violated the restraining order, we're going to give you a restraining order for 10 years. All right. So a restraining order means that that person can't come around you, can't contact you, can't do any of those things. He violated that 10-year restraining order 3 times. He has since been released from jail, and all he got was 3 years probation for domestic violence. So there's room for improvement with the laws. But back to my point is that when it comes to domestic violence, what I can say is that emotional abuse is worse than physical. And I'll tell you why. The black eye will heal. The busted lip will heal. Those types of things will heal. But those words that cut your spirit and your soul, saying those things to you, you're this, you're that, your family's this, your family is that, you're never, just lowering your self-esteem and making you feel like you're crap. Those types of things do not heal. And it takes a while for that to heal. And of course it's trauma, of course it's trauma. Yeah. So I Absolutely. Just want to speak to that.
And I think also,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. And sometimes it can start subtle, especially for those girls who are in college, because you're away from home and things are going on. And one example would be, which is a real life story, is that you're dating this guy and then he takes your cell phone and he breaks your cell phone. Oh, I didn't mean to do it. You made me mad. They're making you think that it's your fault. You know what I mean? Right. Or why are you wearing that? That's too short. Why are you wearing that? That's too revealing. Go take that off. Okay. You're in college. You just left your parents. Now you in a relationship with somebody that's trying to be your parent. No, that's a sign of abuse and controlling when they're telling you what to wear, how to dress. Don't do your hair like that. Let me check your phone. All those types of things are the early signs of what's to come. So today I'm saying, today they break your phone, tomorrow it's your face. So get out and talk to somebody and get some help.
And I think we also need to realize it's a power dynamic. We think it's not so much like we sometimes are mistaken it for anger or rage, but it's power. And it's about having power and control over the other. And we mentioned the children earlier, so I just want to sort of slip children in here because we've gone, is that one of the really big issues, especially when it comes to children, is that children come into this world powerless. The expectation is that the parents are taking care of them. But if the parents become the coercive force, they have no voice. They have less power. They've never experienced they don't know what is safe and what's not safe, because that's the world they're growing up with, and they're growing up in this trauma, and it has a much deeper impact on them because they don't have a comparative, to say this is what safety looks like. And so I just want to put that in there, because when we see these same parents that are controlling their wives, or they start with the children early, and they start with the same kind of emotional abuse. You're not good at this. You're not that. You're not that. And then the children grow up with this image that they're not good enough. They're not good enough. And they've never had a comparative that helps lift them up.
Actually, just one thing that I would like to put forward, like Brenda said, that when there is a domestic violence in a relationship, and like you pointed out, then this coercive control between the parents for the child, I believe that the most important aspect is that when a physical abuse is happening between a couple, and if the child is privy to that at every moment of every day of his life, that particular event would retreat in his mind, and he would, even though he would not do like that. That's what actually happens in physically abused cases I have seen, that I've dealt with in summer also. The children, those young children of those fighting couple, they'll just say ki, they said it in obviously Hindi. So what they said to me was ki mummy papa marpeet kar. That means the mom and dad always fight. Like they did not understand that it was something wrong. Rather, they thought it was a general practice. Ki mummy papa needs to fight. People, the father needs to hit the mother, and the mother needs to protect herself and protect the children. That's a practice that actually needs to happen. So that's the problem, because people
Here, I would also like to add, the ad also came. There was an ad which showed, two children playing, one small boy and girl, and the boy hits the girl, and the parents are watching, and they realize, and they said, "Ab tum now you go and make food for me, because that's what you are supposed to do. You are supposed to get hit and get food made for me." So that is what a child is growing up to understand, that this is a normal human behavior, and this is expected of a gender, and the other gender is supposed to be, the masculine gender is supposed to be hitting, and the female gender is supposed to be taking that, and going and cooking, and that's what the job is. So there we define the role of the gender also. There we define the behavior of the gender, or the wrongful practice imbibing in the children unknowingly. So that's where, and when it comes to teenagers or to adults, the same story is carried forward in generation. Yes, please continue that. I just wanted to put that in.
No, I mean, it's very true. And then if you think about it, if you think about the need to control, we say often, I don't know if this is true, but this is what psychologists will say, that somebody who feels less power within themselves is more likely to try to exert control. So now if you switch that and you think a child grew up with a parent that was always making them feel less than, they're more likely to be the ones that try to exert that control because they had no control over their lives when they were growing up. So that's how that cycle continues. And they become that, and then their children, then they become that. It is a cycle that continues over many generations.
Because that child believes that asserting control will save him from that violence that his particular parents face,
Yes.
one of the parents face. So that's the thing that needs to be stopped. And in case of emotional violence, in Shraddha Wapper's, specifically in Shraddha Wapper's case, I realized one thing in relation to college student, because since I am also in college, when this event happened, so when I went the next day to college, I realized that every single one of my friends or my colleagues or all the female students that were present there were, in every half an hour, either one of their cell phone was ringing. Whoever was living away from home, their parents were concerned. Like they felt that such an event would have a very negative impact on any growing child, especially a teenager who is going through her formative years. Seeing that, firstly, puts a very bad image of how a particular person should behave, a man should behave, or a boy should behave with a woman. That's the very bad message is sent out, that is, this is what is happening in India. So that's why we always try to go to the root of such cases and establish a precedent, establish a law, so that no one can actually do that again. Secondly, what was happening, every woman was feeling victimized because something happened to Shraddha, and which is also right, because any parent would feel that their daughter is in danger. Any daughter or any female would feel that someone they are in relationship with, maybe they're in a very good relationship with that person, maybe it's not a toxic relationship, but they will start self-doubting themselves, second guessing that person. So it develops into a very bad psychology, a bad mentality for any person who comes in contact with such an event. So these incidents needs to be stopped for developing a better mentality in the society as a whole.
Yes. And there, one more thing that Lisa also pointed out, that, the child grows with the need to validate everything. A child grows up to think that, I am worthless and I have to keep validating things and get validations from my parent, who sometimes could be a narcissistic personality. And then the circle goes to even a parent, bullying a child in his or her married life, that we have seen in married relationship. That circle of unworthiness, whether you married somebody with your wish or without your wish, the moment you start living, and then how you are dealing with your spouse and how you are dealing with your children, you always seek validations from an elder who has never given you validated you. So you are always trying to make happy that narcissistic personality, which is not going to happen. So that mindset is started from the triggered from the childhood itself. So instead of raising a child who is emotionally independent, emotionally secure, we are, or we have been, raising a race of people who are, or a generation of people who are, more emotionally insecure. And so every decision they are taking, everything that is happening is trying to getting validation from someone, and even inflicting violence on the other person is just to get validation, especially in marital relationship, in joint families this is happening.
Yeah. And I mean, in the US and many European countries, one of the other issues that are coming is after divorce and parental alienation, which is another form of abuse. And that's where one parent then is coercive to the child to get them to be on their side and against the other parent. And that does a huge amount of psychological harm to the children. So parents will say, well, he's bad, he's terrible, or she's bad, she's terrible, and then separate the child from the other parent. And so that's something that I wish more people will talk about, because we need to reduce that also. It's
Yeah.
another type of harm.
I believe Lisa,
Yeah.
Brenda, and also Sonal would have seen the movie The Judge. If you talk about validation, then that's the perfect example because Tom Hanks, like Robert Downey Jr. in that particular movie, acting as the son of the judge, it shows that his whole life, the whole life of a brilliant lawyer, living at the top of his best at his profession, is fighting for the validation from his father from the time of his birth, when his father ousted him from his house, till the time his father has died, and he's still fighting. At the end of the movie, at immediate end of the movie, his father, after everything has been done and said, his father finally validated by stating that the best lawyer and all, and he stated yes, and in response said you are. And that was the whole crux of the movie, that how a son seeks, finds, runs, and finds his find his ways to reach his goal. A boy or a girl, they will run to find their parents happy, and for that they're willing to achieve anything. And that's what he did when his father said you will be never be good for nothing in the middle part of the movie. He proved them wrong by being one of the most brilliant advocate. But still, when he did not get the validation of his father, he felt frustrated, and he was throwing out his frustration throughout the movie. That was a perfect example.
And when we say that children should be feeling secured, not they should not be living to get doing something good to get love from you. They should really feel secured in your love to do something good. So that sums it up. Brenda, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was saying, I was just sitting here thinking I am helpful. I'm glad that here that we have the domestic violence hotline that anyone can call at any time, and one of the things for like my clients who are divorcing that may be in a hostile, marriage. Well, let me just say, like Lisa was saying, we do the domestic violence screening before the mediation. That tells you whether or not they're going to even be in the same building together, let alone the same room. You know what I mean? So after all of that is said and done, so there is an opportunity to talk to whichever spouse that's being abused, to have them go into counseling, not to tell them what to do, to make a suggestion and give them a referral list, the domestic hotline. So what I've seen happen is that a spouse will be in getting therapy while they're married, and the other spouse has no idea. What they're trying to do is build up their courage and get the strength to leave, because leaving is not as easy as you think it is. You know what I mean? And for some people, they have to reach their limit. That's what I can tell you personally and professionally. You have to reach your limit when you're in a domestic violence situation. Until you reach your limit, you're going to stay. And people say, why is she staying? Why is she staying? He's done this, or vice versa. She's done this, because there are men that I have seen men who are being abused by their wives, and they stay because of the children. It's like, why won't you leave your wife? Your wife is being, because of the children. The man will not leave, and he don't want to talk about it. But by the same token, he will get into counseling to figure out a way to deal with this until the kids turn 18 and it's over. Because for some people, if they're in a domestic violence situation, they came from that and they don't want their kids to grow up without their parent. But an unhealthy marriage and an unhealthy relationship is, I mean, it's worth being on your own, raising your kids, than to have your kids see that dysfunction and them to grow up, like Kanai said, and start the cycle all over again.
Yes, that becomes a real tough call, I should say, for most of the people. But there are cultural things that happen, that there are cultures that over glorify a woman sacrificing a lot in the relationship or in the marriage, over glorifying that, oh, she's a good wife if she sacrifices her career, if she keeps quiet on the misbehavior of in laws or parents, or parents or spousal misbehavior, if she takes nonsense or misbehavior from the children also, or vice versa, if the children are not doing well, then it's the women's fault because she is there and she is not nurtured. The man is always there to earn the money. So, how much time would a man be able to give if she is not able to nurture the kids properly? So, we have to look at the base of things, how why people are not able to get out of such a relationship, because it's a society and a culture thing which glorifies this kind of a behavior, whether in a perpetrator or whether in a victim also, that they would glorify that, a woman walking out of a relationship is not seen as a very favorable person in society also, because there are people who will judge. There are people who will say maybe because she was wrong, she was not able to adjust. There have been film stars who, married twice and two times. They Such things have happened. Oh, this has happened to the second time. Maybe there's a fault in the woman only. So there,
Usually, yes, and I think that's a good point, because it often ends up, you would hear, oh, the woman got divorced, of course she didn't know how to run the family, she didn't know what she was doing, and a man gets divorced, oh, that poor fellow, he had a terrible wife. No one blames the husband for the wife. Everyone blames the woman. And I mean, even in the US, it's changing, but that was an early culture. I can say that because I'm old. Like BJ doesn't know that because she's younger.
oh, great. So you got a compliment here, You're younger.
But yeah, I think this is true, but we have, we have paternalistic societies, and those paternalistic societies have that's the impact of this paternalistic society. I mean, we'd have to study maternalistic, societies to see if it's really different. I don't know, because we don't have enough of them. But I know that I'm working on a project in Africa, in one of the countries in Africa, and the problem with violence against women, and especially sexual violence, is huge. And that impact is going on. I mean, even where there was a lot of storms and the buildings were knocked down, and one of the women was saying they don't feel safe because the men come in their home and take advantage of them. I mean, attack them, rape them. Actually, they didn't say that, they didn't use that word, they were so much nicer, but that's happening all the time, where they don't even feel safe in their own home, and they can't go to any place to find safety. So we have to look at this as not as such a huge issue that, I don't know, change is going to take, it should happen in increments, but at least we have to look away from this idea of violence against women.
And I think what you said earlier, Lisa, power and control. That's that's really what it boils down to for those people who are doing those types of things, power and control. Physical violence, that's sexual violence, those types of things. It's all about control and power.
But the point is, like in physical violence and sexual violence, the victim is resisting to some extent. They are actually trying to save themselves. But in emotional violence, I realized by working only, you cannot find the resistance there. You can see it on her way she converses with you, but she cannot demonstrate the resistance that she actually wants to put forward the other person. In a physical violence case, if you want someone to not come near, you'll push that person away, or no, scream at that person, do actions that show that. But how can you deal with a person in an emotional violence case? How can you actually, tell them to back off from their mind and their heart? How can you tell them to do that in your own mind and your heart? That's very different.
Yeah. And I can just share one of my pet peeves as a mediator. I can just share that with you guys, is when a parent uses a child. For me, that cuts deep, because it's like, how could you use your child like this? And when I witnessed this the first time as a mediator, I was like, am I going to have to stop mediating? Because this is really cutting me deep. This is a child that you're using to, why wouldn't you let your husband see the child, or why wouldn't you let your wife see the child? It's disturbing. So as a mediator, for me, I really don't like it when the one parent uses the child to intimidate the other parent and control the other parent. You know,
So
using
I can
visitation.
give the like worst example that I ever encountered was someone that I know that had been in prison for 45 years for murder. And his mother got him to kill his stepfather. And that's when we're talking about emotional abuse. There's nothing worse than a mother getting her son. And then when her son was in prison, she put a contract on to kill him so that he wouldn't, testify against her. We're talking about the basest kind of thing. What kind of mother does this?
Wow.
Wow,
that leaves you speechless.
This is the extent of emotional abuse that can happen.
Yes.
And imagine the person is not aware of this kind of abuse happening because it becomes a second nature. They have been nurtured to obey like machines.
They were taught, yes, he was taught to be loyal, and his loyalty was with his mother. And he was so much so that he never testified of her part in it. And that is, that was part of the coercion. It was a huge cycle. And to me, I mean, it blew me away when it was like being hit with something when I heard the story, because I also could feel the emotion. And it's like this powerful thing hits you and you're like, oh my gosh, but that to me is like one of the worst cases.
Did this woman, did the mother instill this kind of sense of, loyalty in him by, beating him, abusing him physically? Or did she do this, completed it by emotional violence, by manipulating his mindset about his father,
Yes.
about
Yes, he manipulated his mindset about his stepfather and about all of that, and she manipulated him, and so that manipulation was he was a young man, but he ended up with life in prison with the no possibility of parole.
But the point is, did he did this with a sense of security for himself from his mother, or out of love for his mother, or out of, the use of the hate for his stepfather that his mother had created in him?
No, I mean, I think all of those are true. There was loyalty, there was love, and there was that sense that was created in him that, of hate. So all of those are true. I think it's very complex, and it's difficult to understand the whole thing. And I doubt if he'll ever tell me the whole thing. So, we may never know. But I know that much of the story. I haven't hesitate to share because it's such a private story, but I mean, it is kind of public. It's in the news. It was in the news many years ago. So
because that's what I feel, that when you are that fiduciary relationship, first of all, then raising a person like that, or having so much control that whatever this person is saying, that is the truth. Whatever this person is saying, that means you actually you fill that person's logical thinking brain. Actually, you just made him a machine with a remote control mindset that can that will do whatever you want. And that's what coercive control we are talking about, which starts in the childhood, and that impact leaves on the society, that starts with hate and with power play, with power control, which brings all those vices. Because when you're talking about that case, that person would have been raised like that, to control women, to control the spouse, to control the person who are there in his life, he would have only known that way. He would have seen that in his childhood, and he would have only known that way to act. So that's where you're genetically training the mind to do that, and it's very
Give him
difficult.
credit. I just want to say that his time in prison turned him into one of the most amazing people I have ever met. And everyone respects who he has become. And he's married, he has a family, he's a good father, he is everything that you would want someone to be. And wherever he is in the world, people around him who don't know his story would have no clue.
So
Would say,
that means
this
that
is the most
the
amazing
break,
man I've ever met.
that break from that person was required. That solitude of the prison was required to get back your own self,
Yes.
your own personality, your own thinking, your
Mhm.
own critical, logical thinking. And then when you have that, when you are not under that influence, you become
Right.
you bloom to a person which you are supposed to be.
But I want to throw something out. I don't know if it's time, but before we leave, because I think we had such difficult and heavy conversations that I always like to end on a positive note. So maybe we share what we see, when we see a really good relationship, what does it look like, or something like that, so that we end on the positive. And that's me. I always have that need after I go into a deep.
Yes, even I was thinking that we've really touched on the very, very, very sad and so
Yes.
part of
Good.
it. Let's talk about how we as a society can change it, because, or we can at least think of the positive ways, because that's what when I started talking, that is the perpetrator himself aware that he's doing wrong? Because where when you will when you bring to that, because nobody is born bad. That's the idea.
No.
Well, when you bring to that person the awareness that you here you are going wrong, see the logic or see the sense in your actions and words and your behavior, then you will be able to realize, because nobody wants to actually be bad. So if we can really make a difference in our society by creating, so if what can we actually do if we speak, if we see somebody having I remember a case where there was one person, there's a school function going on, and this person was screaming and shouting at his wife that he has to get a chair for her always. So there was this gentleman who was watching, and he was also with his wife. He immediately goes and picks up a chair for his wife and tells his wife, "Come on, darling, sit down. You were standing for a long time." So that immediately, brought a sense of, softness in that this person, that, I was doing wrong. I mean, I have a lady, I have my spouse with me, and if she is weak physically, or she is not able to sit, or she needs a chair, then if I will get a chair, there's no harm in that. So one positive action can immediately, have a that inflicting effect, that infectious effect. And if we are able to make that effect, if we suddenly are able to, if we see something like that, if we see somebody being bullied, and if we try empathy on that person or on the person who is being bullied, immediately I think the scene will change, because it's very easy that somebody's being laughed at, kids, like kids, throwing stones on the passerby, or on a dog nearby. It's very easy to be a part of the gang and throw a stone, but it is very difficult to go and one step of going and calming that person or whom you are laughing at, being siding that person, and with empathy will actually go a long way to make a difference in the opinion of these people who are throwing the stones, or you are bullying somebody. It's very easy to side with the bullies, but it is a little difficult to, show empathy to the one who's being bullied. And once you show that empathy, maybe the chain reaction happens, and that can change. That's a positive thing I can think of.
I think both have to be true. I think one of the skills we bring as mediators is really suspending judgment, because if you can also talk to the bully in a way that you start to find out where were those sources, and then help them look at things differently, so you're accepting of them but not accepting of the behavior, and giving them a chance to look at their behavior. And I'm saying this because, we do this a lot with people in prison. And I see that when we talk about this reflective practice with them, they start to reflect on, their behaviors and how to change them. Of course, the immediate safety is more important, but this is what over time, because as soon as we label somebody as a bully or an abuser, we are not also then opening up to them. And I'm not saying that we are condoning it, because you're not condoning it, but we also have to use our like we said, every human is born good and born, with all of this wonderful capacity, and realizing that this is generational and generational, then opening up to that, to helping them look at that themselves. But to do that, we have to set aside our judgment. And again, like I said, we're not judging the action, but we're saying you're a human being and you're beautiful, and let's talk about this behavior. And I think those are skills that we bring as mediators, because we can truly appreciate each individual for that seed and promise that they bring.
Wonderfully.
And I guess what I can add is, for me, nonviolence is equality. Equality and nonviolence, they go together. But what I can say regarding domestic violence and violence, period, when it comes to marriages and couples, I think that anytime you go to get your marriage license, you should be able to take a class or watch that movie called War of the Roses. There's a movie called War of the Roses.
Yes.
If you watch that movie, War of the Roses, before you get married, your perspective in life will change, and you will decide, do I even really want to get married? Okay, because he has a heart attack and she don't go to the hospital, but I won't tell the movie. And that would be for couples and marriages. And what I would say for schools and colleges and universities, what that might look like is they need to start with peer mediation. Peer mediation needs to be in every school and every university. I think peer mediation help, and empathy listening circles. And I like what you said, Lisa, about non-judgmental. I'm an empathy listening circle facilitator, and one thing I can say is that it can be used in every spectrum of the world. And it's non-judgmental, non-biased, and it's just an opportunity to go beyond active listening. For me, empathy listening circles is just beyond active listening to really get to where you need to be. And as far as workplace violence and those types of things, I would say what is needed is mandatory emotional intelligence training. With emotional intelligence, is those things that you don't get when you're a child. It's not too late for you to go back and get those things. So emotional intelligence in the workplace, along with empathy listening circles, and our world will start to come together, and we will have peace around the globe. Namaste, USA.
Yay!
That was really good. So we ended on a very good note. Namaste from me.
But Kanishka has got to add his perspective.
Yes, Kanish, we are going to allow you, because there were very good points from you, and the next generation needs to be heard also. Yes.
Actually, I was just like, in my point of view, like as a person growing up to being a teenager now, like growing up from teen also to 20, going in his 20s, I realized one thing, that even when a person is moving through circles, through friends and family, I, it, it is highly, like, as you stated, how can we know what is a good relationship? So, or a good, so I believe that in a good relationship, automatically the persons who get around that group of people who are actually, having trust, love, and taking care of each other, not having an obsession control, the other people would also start to feel that same love and care emanating from. I'll just state a small example. So when I heard about this case specifically, so I have my grandparents that live near me, like my mother's
Mhm.
they live with us only. So whenever I feel like a drastic thing has happened, an idea which is beyond my how I can comprehend it, I will run to them and I discuss about it. So when I saw them, when I see them, I see two people, two very old people, and each of them has problems. Someone has a back problem, someone has a knee problem, someone can does not eat much, someone. So it's not like that they don't argue on things. They definitely do argue on who has more hair, who has less hair, how is age is treating them. But they, at the end of the day, when any of them has a problem, they take both of them take care of each other, if without even speaking about it. Like, even if they like, whenever I was talking with them, I saw that they were having their evening tea. So even without my grandmother saying that she wants a biscuit along with her tea, she wants a snack with along with her tea, my
Mhm.
grandfather put some in her mouth. And without even saying that the sugar was less in the tea for my grandfather, my grandmother stated to me, just hand him over the sugar, he'll add it. And both of them, that's how trust and that's how bonds are created. When you
Yes.
love someone, you do not criticize them or tell them or direct them to do something. You appreciate what they are doing, you support them in what they are doing, and you assist them in what they are doing. You do not change their way of life, you try to assist them in their way of their life. That's how I believe, and that's how I also felt empowered, that yes, if people like my grandparents and grandmother and grandfather is still existing in this world, then maybe this place has a better chance in the coming future. It is not that everyone Shraddha. It's most of the time people are there who are like my grandparents. Even though they are 80 plus, both of them still have these small habits that still make me feel happy when I'm around them. And that's
That's
actually love, what they have for each other and for me. That's why I'm happy around them.
Yes, I think, when we see marriages that are good partnerships where there's that sharing and that silent, you don't need to know, like you're at a party and one of the partners wants to leave. And no one else can tell, but the other partner goes, "Oh, it's time to leave," because they could read the signs. You read the signs of each person, and that's a really good partnership, because that's what a good relationship is, and that passes on to the children, that type of communication. So that's very beautiful. BJ, give us an
Yeah, that was
example.
nice. That was nice. I really like everything that you said, Kanash. That was so enlightening. And what I could say is that for me, it's unconditional love and acceptance. Accept that person the way that they are and don't try to change them, because what you see is what you get. And one thing I could think of, a sermon one of my pastors preached about servant love. Husband and wife go to a party. They're just getting there, greeting all their friends. The husband go in one direction, the wife go in the other direction. And a few minutes later, they say, "Oh, let me look at the food." So the husband go and start fixing a plate. The wife go and start fixing a plate, and they meet each other. It's like, "Here's your plate." "No, here's your plate." Servant love. Each one of them were fixing each other plates and didn't even know, they weren't aware. It's just that servant love. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. Woo!
so we ended on a good note now. So we really know what we need to do in society. We have to use love and spread it and empath, and we have to identify the problems and face them with politeness, with empathy. And as a society, we need to talk about it. We don't need to shy away from it, because it is not something that is going to go away if we are going to close our eyes. It is something that is going to affect our generations to come. So need to be talked and talked about. So I have to say this, that it's a wonderful, wonderful uh, thankful to all of you because I contacted a lot of people, and I have to say this on this session that maybe people will be listening. I contacted a lot of people to talk about coercive control, people who post a lot of things on Facebook, LinkedIn, but nobody was willing to talk about coercive control. I just got frustrated. I was not willing, I just about to postpone this session because nobody wants to talk, but they want to post a lot of things on Facebook and LinkedIn. And people have this innate fear of talking. So, this today, we have at least started off to try and recognize the issues, to handle them in a more positive and in a more, uh, mature manner. We know what the problems in society are, and they are global problems. And we, as I put it, that, maybe the people who are doing this are not aware what they would have suffered in their childhood and their personality differences that have happened. So we have to help those people, even those who are victims, even those who are perpetrators, because they need more help than those victims. Because once we are handling those people, then the victims obviously get helped. So that was really lovely, and thank you so much, all of you, to take your time out on a Sunday. Vijay and Lisa, it is morning for you. Sunday morning, I didn't realize you must.
It's earlier for BJ.
It's
She's
all
in
good.
Texas.
It's all good. You're in Ohio, right? Yeah.
Yes, I'm 1 hour
Wow.
later. You were earlier.
And
Well,
Vijay was enthusiastic and was more than willing. I'm so glad and helpful that she took this and lovely and came. And Ganesh, thank you so much. Those inputs were very much necessary from a junior. So I'll just not
Good. I
speak
mean,
much now.
Kanishka is
yes.
our future. Isn't he wonderful?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's awesome.
Definitely.
You're very impressive. Very, very impressive.
Thank
Very
you, ma'am.
impressive. I agree totally. Thank you, Kanash.
Ma'am, these are just how I am nurtured. So
Obviously well nurtured. We'll just keep working on it. I can be old enough. Yeah, I'm old enough now. Almost. I mean, I'm only 71. I'll be 72
come on.
soon. So,
That's
I'm
hardly.
not as, I thought maybe I'm as old as his grandparents, but not quite.
we
Thank
are very
goodness.
young at heart. That's what I'm saying. That's what I always see them, and I see two young children always, going around things. I do not see a 70-year-old person. I see a small children going around things, and it's so happy to see them. Like, I'm so happy every day whenever I go and meet them and see them. I'm like so happy. That's why.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. I want to meet them when I'm in India.
Yes.
Definitely.
So that's a lovely bunch, and now I have to stop the recording because the recording must go to the people also.
Okay, bye
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye bye. I'll
Namaste,
just stop.
USA.
Namaste
Thank
from
you so
India.
much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being here.